setting common arguments and counter arguments and different ways to handle the conversation. And that is why I'm in law now. So that was one barrier, but another that came with it, and I'm sure myself along with my panelists can agree, that you kind of have to carry yourself differently as a woman. Um, at least a lot of my male peers can get away with speaking in front of an audience or talking to a peer and automatically being listened to. But one thing that I learned really early on is that posture, eye contact, actively listening to what you're saying and almost repeating back what you're saying makes it so that these people actually do listen. So that is what I carry with me now, and that is how I'm entering law today. And that is also why I devote myself to helping women through women's issues with trauma-informed legal aid. So it's been a very interesting ride, and I'm really grateful for the lessons I've learned. And I know they're going to help me a lot in the field of law.
You are a great representation of that because the first time I heard that when we initially chatted, at 17, that is an automatic, kind of this sort of, I feel nervous and don't know what I'm getting into. So that is an amazing representation of, I mean, mind you, it does not have ageism. That can happen to you at 17. It can happen to you at my age, which I'm not going to give away. Um, so what I resonated with what you said, Samantha, actually is more of like the discovery of, how do I build my confidence to really tackle something that I'm going to be passionate about in law. So just a little context, I grew up with both my parents were attorneys, and so I was in that environment at a very young age. I'm not in law. I am in real estate and finance, more in the investment space, but it's actually very much so male dominated. So when you do walk into the room and you don't have that much experience, it's a little bit nerve wracking because you don't know how you're going to connect and create business opportunities. And so as a female, as a minority female, it kind of 10x's the challenge, which then can encourage you and help you catapult right to your winning opportunities. And so thank you for sharing, Samantha. Love the story, and I'm sure we're going to uncover more. So Victoria, love meeting you. Share with us, and I wanted to put that a little bit of that highlight. You mentioned about being in the military, and this is really interesting. I learned this from her the other day. The hiring process, the challenges, but share a little bit of the personal side, what inspired you to really do what you do now when it comes to the recruiting and hiring the new recruits to your field. Would love to hear that.
Well, may I just
Sure.
answer one of your questions
Yes,
about the
definitely.
barriers? So, two memories come to my mind about like challenging barriers. So, I came on active duty in the Army, and my first duty station was in Germany. When I originally enlisted in the Army before becoming an officer, I had my hair in its natural state. It was against the
Yes, that's
regulation.
right.
I didn't know that. I made it all the way through my training. 2 weeks before I was supposed to graduate, I was told to fix my hair. I don't know what that means, so I had to cut my hair all off. So I had a buzz cut or brush cut for about 4 years while I was enlisted through college. When I came on active duty, I remember people, men and women, stating that I wasn't feminine enough because I had a short haircut. I was not trying to go against the grain, but that's what suited me at that time. And I didn't realize that I was apparently being a pioneer because I just refused to grow my hair out because that's not what I wanted. So that was one barrier that I didn't realize was a barrier until I looked back at it. Another one was I am a human resources officer, which means I went to college and I got a degree to become a leader. So my first meeting, we have a staff meeting about every 2 weeks. And in my first meeting, I walked in and I noticed immediately that I was the only. I was the only woman. I was the only black person. I was the only black woman officer. Wow. That did not make me uncomfortable at all. One of the other leaders told my subordinate to sit at the table and for me to sit back. Maybe the New Yorker came out of me, but I was like, that's not going to happen. And I outrank you, so you're not going to tell me what I'm going to do. And I had my subordinate sit back and I sat at the table. And when I sat at the table, I remember thinking to myself, like, how dare he say I should not be here when I probably worked 3 or 4 times harder than every single man in this room just to make it into the door.
Yeah.
Not only am I going to walk in the door, but I'm going to sit at the table and I'm going to speak when I think is appropriate. I did not think much of it until individuals spoke to me later and they said I was such an inspiration. I was like, no, I'm just kind of a rebel, I guess. But to address your question, so human resources in the Army is totally different from human resources in the civilian world. One of the jobs that I do is called strength management, which means I receive all the inbound people coming in and I pinpoint where they're going to go down to the lowest level. And in doing that, I have to look at the racial and gender demographics. I have to. Because when I came on active duty, I was the only, and although that may be uncomfortable for a split second, I'm not, I can't expect every other person to feel that way. So I made it a mission that if I received inbounds that were women, I would not send a single woman to a male dominated unit. I wouldn't even send two. I would try to send 3 or 4 women down there so we had a cohesive group. Because there's power in numbers, and if you send a single woman into a male dominated industry, you have the potential of creating an environment where she can be preyed on. So I would do that purposely, and one of my supervisors saw that and they questioned me. And I remember thinking to myself, I learned from you, Dad. I see that you do that with the guys. Guys that go to the same school, you send them all to the same unit, or guys that have the same passion as you, you send them all to the unit. Why would you think I would not do that? Because it's different for a woman in a male dominated space. We will get preyed on, whereas a male in a male dominated